Why is the news always talking about economic growth and rising wages when making ends meet feels harder than ever? You are not imagining things. It is a statistical illusion. After our video on median salaries, you asked us to dig deeper. Today, we are doing exactly that, completely flipping the global wealth map upside down. We dropped the illusion of nominal euros. Instead, we are using the one metric governments actually fear: the purchasing power standard. It is a virtual currency that wipes out the local price trick. If bread costs twice as much in one country, this stat adjusts for it. On paper, it is the most accurate way to compare people's true purchasing power. But we went a step further. You see, even the PPS fails to separate people crushed by crazy rent from those living rent-free in an inherited home. That is why, in countries where the housing market distorts the numbers the most, we will also look at the exact percentage of income eaten up by housing costs every month. This will show us how much real money people actually have left in their pockets. To make sure we are comparing apples to apples, we will only analyse European countries ranked by Eurostat or by international databases using similar methods. And since so many of you asked, we will also take a look at the US and Canada. Get ready, because a lot of stereotypes are about to be shattered. But remember this video measures how fast your car is going, not how big your gas tank is. True financial security is not about what you spend, but what you save. If you want to see our net wealth ranking, to find out who actually has money in the bank and a paid-off mortgage when the next crisis hits, type Europe in the comments. Welcome to Amazing Europe. Number 38, Albania. Albania kicks off this list with just 6,174 PPS. But hold on, a paradox pops up right away, and raw numbers do not tell the whole story. Yes, Albania is poor in terms of purchasing power, but it is not suffocating from housing costs like many much richer nations. You can see why by looking at a little-known metric, the housing cost overburden rate. What is that? It is the percentage of people spending more than 40% of their disposable income just to keep a roof over their heads. In Albania, this figure is a mere 2.1%. Simply put, almost nobody is being crushed by rent or mortgage payments. So yes, Albanians do not have much, but at least that little bit is not eaten up by housing. This reminds us of an uncomfortable truth. Being poor is not the same as being trapped. Number 37, Montenegro. Montenegro sits at the bottom of the ranking with 7,309 PPS. On paper, this nation unilaterally adopted the euro to play the part of a wealthy country. The reality is an economy crushed by massive debt to China and consumer prices that now match the West. Let's take a moment to clear up a common misunderstanding. 7,309 is not the amount of euros a Montenegrin earns in a year. Forget about gross or net salaries. The PPS is a virtual unit of measurement. It simply tells you this. If we measured the median Montenegrin's income using the same price level as the European average, their true purchasing power would be worth 7,309 euros. It is a thermometer for actual well-being, not a bank statement. And it shows us that here, even after adjusting for prices, people are barely scraping by. Number 36, North Macedonia. We step up slightly to 7,609 PPS. This country has literally become Germany's low-cost assembly line. It attracted massive European factories with rock-bottom taxes and dirt-cheap wages. But this strategy is turning into a trap. The real purchasing power of its citizens is stuck at the bottom of the ranking because the wealth created here does not stay here. It flies away to Munich or Berlin as corporate profits. Furthermore, North Macedonia is now a satellite state. If the German auto industry slows down, and it is slowing down heavily, Skopje's economy comes to a dead halt. The median citizen has seen a slight improvement in recent years. Still, their true standard of living is that of a second-class European worker, forced to build cars they could never afford to buy. Number 35, Serbia. With 8,971 PPS, Serbia likes to call itself the Tiger of the Balkans. On paper, it has grown massively thanks to a construction boom, especially in Belgrade, fueled by huge streams of foreign capital. But this boom is a noose around the neck of everyday citizens. Housing data in Serbia is among the worst on the entire continent. The share of housing costs, the chunk of a salary burned every month on rent, mortgages and bills, sits at 23.8%. But the cruelest number is the housing cost overburden rate. This measures who is literally being choked by housing costs. A staggering 11.4% of the population spends more than 40% of their income just to avoid ending up on the streets. Why? It is simple. Big international investments have artificially inflated real estate prices. They are building skyscrapers and luxury apartments that the average Serbian, with their slim purchasing power, could never dream of affording. Number 34. Turkey. Let's make a quick geographic clarification. Turkey is not strictly a European country, but a transcontinental one, and it is the only one of its kind officially ranked by Eurostat. Here, the purchasing power data reads like the chronicle of a monetary suicide. Out-of-control inflation, driven by stubborn interest rate policies, has literally wiped out the savings of the middle class. As if that were not enough, Turkish people are also suffering deeply when it comes to housing. The share of housing cost devours 21.1% of disposable income, and the overburden rate hits an alarming 10%. Both figures are among the worst on the continent. The reason? Rents in Istanbul have skyrocketed, as real estate has become a safe haven against the brutal devaluation of the Turkish lira. Number 33. Slovakia. Slovakia made a massive bet on the auto industry. It became the assembly line of Europe, but without ever developing true added value. The result? Real wages are crushed by an unforgiving stagnation. And there is an even darker shadow hanging over the nation. This country is facing an unprecedented crisis due to a lack of social housing and a surging cost of living, which is pushing more and more people to the margins of society. Homelessness has become a silent emergency. It is a clear sign that parking the German auto industry in the East is not enough to guarantee a decent life for all citizens. Number 32. Hungary. We move up to 11,958 PPS. Hungary has built its entire economy around becoming the industrial backyard for German multinationals. It lured in giants like Audi and BMW with laughable taxes and massive subsidies. Yet, the median Hungarian citizen is left with a purchasing power that ranks them among the poorest in Europe. One reason is the constant devaluation of the Hungarian forint against the euro. This strategy makes Hungarian factories super competitive for exports, but it acts as an invisible tax that empties the middle class's shopping carts. The government pumps cash into the system, but inflation, which is among the highest and most stubborn in Europe, instantly eats up any wage increases. Number 31. Romania. With 12,861 PPS, Romania has made one of the most stunning leaps of the last decade. It climbed the ranks thanks to a tech boom fueled by aggressive flat taxes, becoming the digital workshop of Europe. Yet, its median income still looks modest. It is weighed down by a massive divide between hyper-connected cities like Cluj and vast rural areas still stuck in pure subsistence farming. The good news is that the share of housing costs drops to an astonishing 15.4%. That is one of the lowest rates in Europe. The reason? The fall of communism created a middle class of super homeowners. Over 90% of Romanians live in homes they own outright, without a mortgage. Wages are low compared to the West, but the money left in their pockets is remarkably safe from the greed of banks. Number 30. Greece. Greece is the poster child for a survivor that has stopped dreaming. The news tells you about the Greek miracle. They talk about a country finally growing after the abyss of the sovereign debt crisis. Yet, its PPS stops at just 13,612, stuck at the very bottom of Europe. But when you look at housing, this supposed miracle turns into a financial horror movie. Greece holds the absolute continental record for the housing drain. Every single month, 35.5% of the median salary is swallowed up by housing costs. And the overburden rate hits an apocalyptic peak of 26.4%. 1 in 4 Greeks is strangled by the cost of keeping a roof over their heads. The reason? Greece sold off its real estate to foreign funds. Tourism and short-term rentals have turned Athens into a playground for the rich, pricing out its own citizens. Number 29. Bulgaria. We move up to 14,843 PPS. This figure marks a true statistical miracle. In 10 years, nominal salaries in euros have jumped by 200%. And the country has also recently entered the Eurozone. But be careful, this boom is not born from an industrial revolution, but rather from the greatest paradox in the European job market. Bulgaria is the victim of an unprecedented demographic bleed. After years of a mass exodus to the west, workers left back home have become incredibly scarce. To survive, companies have been forced to desperately raise salaries. Bulgaria now faces a massive challenge. It must prove that these new wages are not just a consolation prize for those left behind, but the foundation to rebuild an economy where people actually choose to stay. Number 28. Lithuania. At 15,110 PPS, Lithuania continues the Baltic dream. Over the last decade, it has ridden the wave of a nominal wage explosion nearing 180%. It has literally marketed itself as Europe's new tech paradise. We are talking about ridiculously low taxes, booming startups, and a capital city, Vilnius, that hosts the bridgeheads of global fintech giants. So why hasn't its median purchasing power broken to the top of the list? The nation lives a ruthless double life. While a small tech elite cashes in on record salaries, the everyday economy is gasping for air. With the cost of living skyrocketing, the only upward mobility left for many is a one-way flight to London or Oslo. It is a digital boom that enriches capital, but leaves the real country completely deserted. Number 27. Portugal. We step up to 16,634 PPS. For years, Portugal has been celebrated as the economic miracle of southern Europe. It became the promised land for digital nomads, foreign retirees, and real estate investors. Lisbon and Porto became the capitals of European cool, drawing in billions in foreign capital. But this influx of wealth has a ruthless dark side. The country turned into an amusement park for wealthy expats, triggering an unprecedented housing crisis. The local economy is increasingly dependent on tourism and low added value services. Because of this, it fails to guarantee a decent purchasing power. The result? An entire generation of young Portuguese people finds themselves priced out of their own cities. They are forced to emigrate or live in shared rooms. This shatters the illusion of an economic boom that only enriched those who already had money to invest. Number 26. Latvia. It overtakes its cousin Lithuania, but this comes at a massive cost. Over the last few decades, the country hit the gas pedal to turn Riga into a modern commercial hub, trying to mirror the neighbouring Scandinavian model. But this shiny facade hides a countryside that has been completely hollowed out. In fact, the median purchasing power of Latvians stops at just 17,097 PPS. The reason? A deadly combination of brutal inflation wiping out savings and a silent demographic bleed. While the capital draws in foreign investment, the most skilled young people from the provinces keep fleeing west. Latvia is the perfect optical illusion of two-speed growth. The big economic numbers celebrate the success of a tiny urban elite, while condemning the rural middle class to a daily struggle for survival. Number 25. Estonia. For years, it has been hailed as the Silicon Valley of Europe. It is the land of invisible bureaucracy, digital citizenship, and booming startups. It attracts investors from all over the world and has turned Tallinn into a glowing showcase of modernity. Yet, behind this hyper-connected miracle lies a much harsher reality. The median purchasing power of Estonians sits at just 17,147 PPS. Why? Estonia was slammed by one of the most violent spikes of inflation in the entire Eurozone, which completely wiped out real wages. While a small tech elite thrives, the traditional middle class is crushed by an unbearable cost of living. It is brutal proof that a cutting-edge digital economy quickly enriches investors, but risks leaving anyone outside the tech bubble dramatically behind. Number 24. Czech Republic. Considered for years to be the great industrial engine of Central Europe, it boasts record-low unemployment and deep historical ties with the German manufacturing powerhouse. Prague is a jewel that attracts tourists and capital, broadcasting an image of absolute wealth and stability to the world. And yet, behind the scenes of this seemingly perfect machine, the middle class is under siege. The median purchasing power of Czechs is stuck at 17,190 PPS. The true silent killer in this nation? The real estate market. Today, housing costs eat up a massive 22.1% of disposable family income. Prague and other urban centres have become a playground for hedge funds, pushing prices to completely out of reach levels. Number 23. Croatia. As the second to last country to adopt the euro, it is often written off as just a summer vacation spot. Its economy is driven by tourism along the picturesque Dalmatian coast, with nominal wages that struggle to compete with Western giants. Yet, one of Europe's best-kept secrets is hiding here. The median purchasing power keeps growing, and it now sits at 19,745 PPS. The trick is not found in massive paychecks, but in a huge structural advantage: housing. In Croatia, housing costs take up just 13% of disposable family income. On top of that, the housing overburden rate is a mere 3.2%, making it one of the lowest on the entire continent. Thanks to incredibly high home ownership rates inherited from the past, citizens are much less choked by rent or speculative mortgages than in other nations. Number 22. Poland. For over a decade, it has been celebrated as the true economic miracle of the East. It is an unstoppable tiger, capable of absorbing European funds and turning them into a formidable industrial engine. Warsaw and Krakow are pulling in multinationals at a rapid pace, positioning themselves as the continent's new manufacturing and tech hubs. This frantic race toward Western standards has produced extraordinary results, pushing the median purchasing power to an impressive 19,925 PPS. That is a historic leap past many older nations in the Union. The secret lies in a massive domestic market and soaring wages, which have managed to withstand the blow of brutal inflation. However, wealth remains deeply divided. A massive gap separates the booming metropolises, where incomes almost rival Berlin, from the eastern countryside that is still lagging behind. Number 21. The United Kingdom. For years, it was the great European mirage of high wages, an all-powerful financial city, and London acting as a global magnet for talent, capital, and ambition. But behind this glittering image lies an increasingly divided country. The wealth generated at the top struggles to trickle down to the rest of society. The median purchasing power reaches 21,141 PPS. However, we need to clarify a crucial point. Unlike the other countries, this figure does not come from Eurostat. Instead, it comes from a harmonised OECD dataset used to make the UK comparable on an international level. And this is exactly where the British paradox lies. Outside of London and the South East, stagnant wages, fierce rents, and struggling public services have eroded the security of the middle class. It is a financial giant that keeps making money, but is increasingly unable to actually distribute it. Number 20. Spain. Here is one of the stereotypes we mentioned at the beginning. How many would have bet on seeing Spain, often associated with tourism and unemployment, surpass the United Kingdom? Yet, the Spanish median purchasing power reaches 22,408 PPS. How do we explain this overtake? The first reason is the housing market. While astronomical rents and out-of-control mortgages devour British incomes, Spain enjoys a historically high home ownership rate that acts as a protective shield. But it is not just about housing. Even excluding rent, the general cost of living in the UK is about 25% higher than in Spain. Furthermore, we must clarify a crucial statistical detail. Spain's figure is from 2025, while the latest available data for the UK stops at 2021. This time, gap undoubtedly contributes to widening the current distance between the two nations. Number 19. Italy. The eternal paradox of Europe. Together with Greece, it is the only country on the continent where real wages have been dramatically flat for over 30 years. It is an economy often described as constantly on the edge of the abyss, yet incredibly, it manages to hold its ground. The median purchasing power stands at 22,624 PPS. How does the middle class survive with such stagnant wages? The secret weapon is real estate. The impact of housing costs on family income is surprisingly low, sitting at just 13.6%. However, this national average hides a brutal geographic divide. In the south, chronically depressed wages are saved by a massive heritage of inherited, fully paid-off family homes. This is the real social safety net. In the wealthy industrial north, the exact opposite happens. European-level salaries are relentlessly devoured by out-of-control rents and mortgages. Number 18. Slovenia. Just above Italy, by a mere handful of change, we find this little jewel nestled between the Alps and the Balkans. Completely under the radar of the media, this country has built one of the most solid welfare models of the former Eastern Bloc, even managing to surpass historic Western powers. The median purchasing power of Slovenians reaches 22,635 PPS. But the true economic masterpiece is not hidden in massive paychecks. Instead, it is found in the incredible management of the cost of living. The real magic happens with housing. In Slovenia, keeping a roof over your head takes up only 13.6% of the monthly family budget on average. And that is not all. The percentage of citizens literally strangled by housing costs at the end of the month is incredibly low, sitting at just 3.5% of the population. Both of these figures are among the lowest on the entire continent. Number 17. Malta. This is a tiny archipelago in the heart of the Mediterranean. It is known as Europe's iGaming mecca and an endless magnet for foreign capital. With an economy running at full speed and extremely limited living space, you would expect a real estate jungle completely out of reach for everyday citizens. Instead, the island hides an unexpected protective shield. The median purchasing power of the Maltese reaches 22,894 PPS. The secret behind this performance? Just like in Slovenia, the key is the extremely low cost of keeping a roof over your head. In fact, the impact on people's wallets is even smaller here. The chunk of a salary that a family has to sacrifice every month for housing drops to record lows for the entire continent. Thanks to a historically high home ownership rate, locals can protect their incomes from the speculative bubble that hits expats. Number 16. France. It has always been considered the great engine of the European Union alongside Germany. It is a proud nation with one of the most generous and protective welfare systems in the world. For decades, the French model was a beacon of stability for the entire continental middle class. Yet, behind all the Parisian elegance, the gears have seriously jammed. the median purchasing power of the French now stands at 23,222 pps. This is still a solid number, but it cannot hide the perfect storm currently sweeping the country. And this is not just an economic crisis marked by record deficits and deindustrialization. France is being torn apart by social, political, and crime-related divides that are unprecedented in its history. However, the wealth accumulated in the past still manages to act as a cushion. Number 15. Ireland. For years, it has been portrayed as the ultimate European miracle. It is the land of American multinationals, soaring wages, and an unbridled tech boom. But behind this sparkling image lies one of the craziest real estate markets in Europe. Home prices and rents have exploded to levels that have put entire generations in serious trouble. Yet, the median purchasing power remains extremely high, reaching 23,288 pps. And this is where the Irish paradox emerges. Even though the cost of housing has risen brutally, the percentage of families truly crushed by excessive housing expenses remains low, hovering around 4.5%. This means that incomes, at least for a large part of the population, are still absorbing the shock. In Ireland, housing has become a massive social wound, but not quite enough to completely wipe out the strength of salaries. Number 14. Cyprus. This is an island often in the news as a golden refuge for foreign capital. It is a geopolitical crossroads in the heart of the Mediterranean that many dismiss as just a beach and banking economy. Yet, for its citizens, it hides one of the most enviable safety nets in Europe. The median purchasing power soars to 23,782 pps. How do they do it? The secret is a real estate market that acts as a true shield of steel. Keeping a home absorbs on average just 11.4% of a family's monthly budget. But the truly stunning figure is another one. The number of citizens economically strangled by housing costs is just 2.4% of the population. We are talking about two of the lowest figures on the entire continent. Without the vice-like grip of rent and mortgages, normal salaries turn into a very high quality of life. Number 13. Finland. For years, it has dominated global happiness rankings. It is a nation that guarantees top-quality services to make up for the hardships of an extreme climate. Its median purchasing power reaches 24,091 pps. However, when analysing housing costs, a seemingly unexplainable paradox emerges. Here, the average share of income devoured by housing is high, making it one of the heaviest burdens in Europe. Yet, the rate of those in severe financial distress over housing drops to just 4.7%, which is a record for stability. How do we explain this contradiction? The answer lies in the rock-solid Nordic welfare system. Houses are expensive, and heating them during the long winters weighs heavily on every family budget. Nevertheless, a formidable system of public subsidies and well-distributed wages prevents people from sinking into a crisis. Everyone pays a lot, but no one is financially crushed by it. Number 12. Denmark. It has always been considered the perfect utopia of Northern Europe, the homeland of social equality and sky-high wages. Yet, behind this idyllic facade lies one of the toughest financial challenges on the continent. The median purchasing power stands at 24,297 pps. This is an excellent number, but it is heavily scaled back by the real estate market. Keeping a home devours a massive 26.3% of the monthly family budget, and the percentage of citizens struggling with housing costs nears 14.6%. Both figures are among the highest in Europe. The real-world consequences: many young middle-class people are forced to move out of Copenhagen. However, this financial drain is largely offset by a formidable welfare system. Healthcare, free education, and excellent public services soften the blow. You sacrifice a lot for real estate, but in return, you get a social and working ecosystem that remains one of the most solid and envied in the world. Number 11. Sweden. The Scandinavian giant fights tooth and nail to defend its position at the top of Europe. We are talking about an innovation superpower, capable of guaranteeing incredible nominal wages and a welfare state that remains a solid global benchmark. That is why it ranks so high on our list. In fact, the median purchasing power hits an excellent 24,826 pps. However, this undeniable wealth has to deal with increasingly urgent challenges. On one hand, there is real estate, the chunk of a salary devoured by housing, and the financial overburden rate are only slightly lower than Denmark's, still remaining among the highest in Europe. Adding to the erosion of this undeniable material quality of life is a recent and unprecedented wave of urban crime. It is a Sweden that remains incredibly wealthy, but today it is decidedly more complex and fragile. Number 10. Germany. For decades, it was the industrial engine of Europe. It stood as the ultimate symbol of a solid middle class, well-paid jobs, and economic order. Even though it is facing some struggles today, it remains a manufacturing powerhouse and a benchmark for the continent. It manages to protect a standard of living that many other major countries can only envy. The median purchasing power of Germans climbs to 26,594 pps. Yet, real estate takes a heavy toll here too. The two indicators linked to housing costs are very close to Sweden's. The difference is that Germany is partially saved by a more manageable cost of living. In other words, housing drains a large chunk of income, but the rest of everyday expenses leave the middle class with much more breathing room. Number 9. Belgium. Now we move to the institutional heart of the European Union. This is a country often criticised for its political gridlock and for having one of the highest tax burdens on labour in the world. With that in mind, you would expect a middle class literally suffocating under taxes. Instead, the median purchasing power soars to 26,860 pps. What is their secret weapon? Belgium is one of the very few countries in the world that legally enforces automatic wage indexing. While recent inflation in the rest of Europe has slaughtered savings and wiped out real incomes, paychecks here have adjusted right alongside the cost of living. It is a formidable mechanism. Even in a high-tax system, it has bulletproofed the wealth of its citizens, guaranteeing them a solid spot in the economic Olympus of the continent. Number 8. Iceland. This is a remote island famous for its extreme nature and an unstoppable tourism boom. Since it absolutely has to import almost every consumer good from abroad, you might expect a cost of living that would vaporize any paycheck. Yet, this tiny nation ranks among the absolute best in Europe. The median purchasing power soars to an impressive 28,981 pps. Just like we saw with the United Kingdom, we should point out that this is not an official Eurostat number. Instead, it comes from harmonized OECD data used to allow for international comparisons. How does the middle class thrive with such terrifying consumer prices? The secret lies in sky-high nominal wages, nearly full employment, and an economy powered by ultra-cheap geothermal energy. Even while battling a red-hot real estate market in Reykjavik, Iceland guarantees its residents an incredible standard of living. Number 7. The Netherlands. For years, they have proven themselves to be a true commercial superpower, thanks to cutting-edge infrastructure, tax breaks, and a highly dynamic job market. The country is an unstoppable magnet for international talent and expats. The median purchasing power hits an incredible peak of 29,714 pps. However, this number hides a fierce daily struggle. The true limit of this model is the ruthless housing crisis, infamously known as the Woon crisis. Finding a home in Amsterdam or Rotterdam has become a monumental task. Speculative rents hit people hard, especially those without upfront capital. Fortunately, the sheer brute force of sky-high Dutch salaries manages to largely absorb this housing shock. This secures the country a premium spot among Europe's elite. Number 6. Austria. Vienna and other Austrian cities have dominated global quality of life rankings for years. They combine Central European efficiency with a highly advanced economy. But the secret to this prosperity goes well beyond simple salaries. The median purchasing power flies to 29,758 PPS. How do they manage to beat even the fiercely competitive Netherlands? The answer is found in the real estate market, or rather, in how the state has tamed it. Unlike neighbouring capitals choked by speculation, Austria, and Vienna in particular, boasts one of the most extensive public and rent-controlled housing systems in the world. Keeping rents artificially low means leaving a huge amount of disposable income in the pockets of citizens. High salaries that are not devoured by housing costs form the absolute perfect equation. Number 5. Switzerland. If we only looked at the nominal median salary, this nation would hold the undisputed first place. In the public imagination, the Swiss cantons have always represented an earthly paradise of wealth and the golden refuge of supersalaries. Yet, when measuring true well-being, Switzerland inevitably slides down the ranking, stopping at 29,828 PPS. How can the highest-paid nation in Europe lose the purchasing power crown? The culprit is a sky-high cost of living, driven by a ruthless real estate market. On average, maintaining a home devours 25.6% of disposable family income. On top of that, the percentage of citizens literally crushed by housing costs jumps to 15.3%, which is one of the highest rates on the continent. The Swiss have massive paychecks, but they are largely swallowed up by rent and fixed expenses. Number 4. Canada. Let's step outside European borders for a moment. We included Canada in this video because so many of you asked for it. You were curious to compare our economies with the famous North American dream. The median purchasing power in Canada soars to an impressive 30,974 PPS. Of course, since this is a non-EU nation, we should point out that this number does not come from Eurostat. Instead, it is based on harmonized OECD data. It is a massive figure driven by substantial salaries, but it hides a fierce trap. Canada is actually going through a brutal housing crisis, much worse than in many European nations. A lethal mix of record population growth from immigration, a chronic shortage of new homes, and financial speculation has made cities like Toronto and Vancouver completely unaffordable. Sky-high rents and mortgages are literally devouring incomes. This turns the myth of overseas prosperity into a true nightmare for the middle class. Number 3. Norway. The kingdom of the fjords is literally floating on a sea of wealth thanks to oil and an unstoppable economy. Yet, even this untouchable Nordic giant hides a massive paradox. The median purchasing power of Norwegians reaches dizzying heights, hitting 33,801 PPS. But the housing market data is ruthless. The share of income devoured by housing and the financial overburden rate are among the worst on the entire continent. So how does it still dominate the ranking? Base salaries are so astronomical that even after paying insane amounts for housing, citizens still have more money left in their pockets than the rest of Europe. The true cost of this model? To afford real estate, Norwegians have racked up some of the highest private household debt in the world. It is a titanic level of wealth, but it is dangerously fueled by credit. Number 2. The United States. Here is another highly anticipated bonus. Just like with Canada, we included the US because so many of you requested it to compare Europe with the stars and stripes myth. Once again, we must clarify that this data comes from the OECD and not from Eurostat. The American median purchasing power hits an incredible 36,665 PPS. It is a monstrous figure, but it hides a gigantic statistical illusion. The United States is literally split in half by its real estate market. Famous and incredibly wealthy states like California and New York are pushing out their middle class. Massive salaries are relentlessly devoured by out-of-control rents. On the other hand, states considered much less glamorous and far from the spotlight, like Ohio or Iowa, now guarantee a vastly superior real standard of living because homes are still affordable. Furthermore, we must remember that in countries like the United States and Switzerland, the healthcare system relies on private insurance. This means out-of-pocket costs amounting to several thousands of dollars or francs every year just for basic premiums, often coupled with extremely high deductibles before the insurance even kicks in. If we were to factor these mandatory healthcare costs into the net income, the real purchasing power would plummet, causing these two countries to drop significantly in our ranking. Before we reveal the winner, if you found this video interesting, please support our project by leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the bell icon so you do not miss our new videos. And remember this, if you want to see the ranking of European countries based on their net wealth, to find out who is truly best protected from a major financial crisis type Europe in the comments. Number 1. Luxembourg. The Grand Duchy has always been wrapped in the exclusive myth of a financial paradise. It is a tiny patch of land populated by bankers, European officials, and multinational headquarters. With such a massive concentration of wealth, you would expect an extreme cost of living, capable of pushing out anyone who is not a millionaire. Instead, its median purchasing power dominates the board with a staggering 37,781 PPS. The secret behind this absolute first place? Unlike Switzerland, Norway, or the Scandinavian giants, where massive salaries are ruthlessly devoured by the real estate market, the burden of housing here remains surprisingly light, at least compared to other wealthy nations. Sure, nominal house prices are sky high. However, base salaries are so enormous that they completely diffuse the impact on a family's budget. It is a perfect equation that crowns Luxembourg as the undisputed king of European prosperity. But will it still be number 1 when we switch from looking at income to wealth? Many of you have suspected this for a long time. Having high spending power every month does not necessarily mean you are financially rock solid. There are nations we saw at the top today that are hiding a massive skeleton in the closet, a sleep-depriving level of private debt. On the flip side, there are nations sitting in the middle of today's map where citizens are actually sitting on mountains of wealth, built through decades of savings and home ownership. Do you want to know which European countries actually offer their citizens the best safety net in a global economic crisis thanks to this accumulated wealth? If so, type Europe in the comments. And, in case you missed it, here is the video where we ranked European countries and the United States by median income. That is all for this video. See you next time!